Hey CSC235 class, this is Professor Homa. Welcome to ex4-date function, and we're going to this will be simple. We're just going to take our date exercise that we were working on, and we're going to put a function on it so it actually activates when we hit a button. So it's nothing too difficult. So we're just going to be altering existing code in my CodePen here for my RM Homa, and I'm going to go into my dashboard first, and I'm going to go into my collections because I actually want to go into my csc235 spring 2018, and what you want to do is you want to open up the last one that you did, the date arrays. So here's my date arrays, ex3. So you want to open up ex3, hopefully you have that done, and that's the one where we just said today's the date. And remember, we had a text, just a regular text h2 here that showed that we used as a sample, and then we had one that actually displayed it through the JavaScript. So what we're going to do here, the first thing to do is basically fork this. So when you open that up, just fork it and just wait for the screen to kind of refresh, and then go to the pencil and then go here and change the name, and I'm going to call it ex4, and it's going to be date and then function. So I'm going to call it ex4-date function. We had date arrays, now we're going to have ex4-date function, and then I'm going to do save, and then once you save it, I actually want to put it in my collection. So I'm going to go here to collections, and I'm going to put it in my csc235, so I'm going to put it in there. That'll add it to that collection. Now we're going to be deleting stuff from here, so that's going to be easy. So the first thing we're going to go here is going to go into the HTML and get rid of some of this stuff. I'm going to get rid of this h2 that just wrote the date, because that one that was just a sample to look at so we knew what it should look like. So I'm going to wipe out that tag, and that should go away. And I'm actually going to wipe out all these 5 paragraphs here with the IDs, because those were just kind of samples with the full date and all those things. We're not going to use that either. So we're going to be left with one line of code here. And notice nothing's showing up because we kind of messed up some of our things that are going here. But what I am going to put is I'm going to put a button up here. I'm going to put a button tag, just a straight button. So that's all I'm going to do, and it's very small. So actually, another thing I'm going to do is, and you again leave this h2 here. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to do a CSS for button, and just put my open and closing brackets, and I'm just going to put font size, and I'm just going to make it a little bigger. And we actually only have to go 100%. You'd think you'd have to go bigger, but 100% will make it bigger. So that's what I want the button to look like. That looks better, and that's all I need to do with the CSS, so I don't need to do anything else with the CSS. JavaScript, we're going to be doing a bunch of things here, so I'm going to kind of cover this up, and you could use these little buttons. So I'll cover that up and go into the JavaScript. I'll make this wider right now so I could see everything. This is the last thing I did. Remember, we had a variable for D that represented a new date object, and then we had all these things, which basically, these are the things that wrote all that stuff on the page. And I don't need these, but I do need the new date object. So delete all of these. I don't need these. Keep your variables, but just get rid of those, because all they did was just write those 5 paragraphs to the page, which we're not using. So I'm going to get rid of those. Even though it says variables up here, this is a variable as well. These are kind of the array variables. I could cut this and put it below variables, because then all the variables are together, and that would kind of be more consistent. And I have my date variable, I have my weekdays, I have my months, and I have all these variables down here, which I am using. So all we want to do, though, is instead of showing the date automatically, which what makes it show it automatically? It's actually this down here, this line, document.getElementById date string inner HTML equals date string, and the date string is actually here. This is the date string, all those things kind of strung together, and that's what displays it. Now what I'm going to do, and I'll get rid of this console stuff. I don't need that right now. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit return here, and this line that's displaying this is going to be in a function, and we're going to make it show up when we hit a button. So this will be easy. And so what I'm going to do is I'll hit another return, and I'll go above it, and I'll type the word function. That's a keyword in JavaScript that means you're going to name a function, just like var date is the keyword for a variable, and then the name of it, the keyword for a function is function. So I'm going to call it showdate, and I'm going to use camel case. That means I'm going to use a capital D to kind of separate the 2 words, and then I'm going to use an open and closing parentheses, which these are for parameters, but we don't have any parameters that we're going to send to it, but we still need the open and closing parentheses. And then also what we need in JavaScript is we need open and closing curly brackets that indicate what's inside the function. So I'm going to put that there, and now you can hit return, and then now I want to actually cut this and put it inside there. You have to make sure that this element, because this is what's going to happen when you run the function. So I'm going to cut this out of here. Just make sure that this is inside here, and it looks better if it's indented. Now notice there's nothing showing here because it's part of a function. And I should still even put a semicolon after the function. So now we have a function called showdate, and this is what's going to happen when the function runs. Now you could just run the function. Like at the end of the page, you can just, if you wanted to, you could just do showdate, and that'll basically just kind of run the function on the page. So that means that we're basically calling the function, and what that means is after we define a function, we're just calling it and it's running. So now it's running, except I don't want to run it automatically, or we didn't even need the function. What I want to do is take this, I'll even cut it, and I'm going to take it up here, I'm going to have it run on the button click. We're going to use something called an event that happens when we click on the button. And we're going to put this right inside the HTML, which isn't always recommended, but we're going to go button, and we're going to do something called onclick, which is a button event. And we're going to say equals, and then in quotes, I'm going to paste the function. And it's going to have the parentheses with it too. So now basically this onclick kind of property for the button is going to run a function. It's kind of combining HTML and JavaScript, but that's okay for now. And what should happen is that function won't run because we didn't call it until we click the button. So now if we click the button, it'll run the function. So let me save that. So that was pretty easy. We're not done yet, but we won't have a whole lot more to do. We'll just kind of expand on this a little bit. That was really easy to do. We basically, again, just created a function that just wrote that date string to the page. Instead of just having it get written to the page, we had it basically occur when a function runs. So again, function keyword, showdate is the name we made up. It's inside of curly brackets with semicolon. And then also this statement is inside there with a semicolon. And it's, pulling all this stuff from the variables which we already had. Now let's say we wanted to hide a date. What we could do is we could just make another button. We could just copy the button, paste it, and now I have two show dates, and I'm going to make one button that says hide date. See, that says hide date. Now we're not going to run this function show date. I'm going to make a function called hide date. Now I don't have the function yet, so be very careful, but I'm going to use the same kind of writing. It's going to be called hide date, and you might get an error because it's referring to a function you don't have yet. So this button is going to run the hide date function, which we do not have. So let's make one. We're going to go down and copy this function and just paste it right below it, and we're going to change the name of it, and it's going to be called hide date. Now right now it's doing the same thing. So hide date does the same thing as show date. They both do the same thing. So how would we make it hide it? Well, there's different ways to do hiding. You could change the opacity, you could change all kinds of things. What we're going to do right now is, since we're using a statement that's writing HTML to the page, we could actually just make it write an empty string. Now an empty string in JavaScript is just two quotes and there's nothing inside. That means it's basically going to write nothing. So if we do show date, it's going to write that to the page. If we do hide date, as long as, now make sure you need the function hide date and you need the onclick hide date, and this just shows what the button looks like. So you have to make sure that they're exactly the same. You can't have a small d up here. If you had a small d here, it would not work. So if I did show date and did hide date, it would not hide it. It has to be exactly the same. It has to have a capital D so they match up to that function name. So now when I do show date, hide date, they work like that. So one other thing I'm just going to do, and this is just to kind of mess around a little bit, just to finish this off because it's a quick exercise. What if we wanted to change the look of it? When we did show date, what if we wanted to have it so that maybe it has a red background with white type? To do that, we can basically, that would be part of the show date if we wanted to do that. And what we'll do is inside here, and I'm going to copy this because we're talking about that particular paragraph. I'm going to copy this. And let's say I'm going to just change the end of this. And instead of changing inner HTML, we're going to use another property. We're going to use one called style. And that's actually a CSS style. So let's say we wanted to change the style dot color. Like just for example, dot color equals, and I'm just going to do red. And you could do red like that, or you could do # FF0000 if you wanted to do your hex. But I'm just going to put red because that's kind of standard color name right now. So what's going to happen when I run the show date function, it's not only going to write the date string, but it's also going to take the date string and change its CSS style using the property of color to red. So let's see what happens. Now it makes it red, and we could still hide the date, and it makes it red and hides the date. And let's say if we wanted to do something called, let's say we wanted to make it white. This is just expanding a little bit. I'll make it white. Now white, you're not going to see it. And make sure I put a semicolon here, but I want to change the background of my page. Now this is a little tricky because I want to make the background of my color of my page red. So how would I make the background color? The background color of my page would be, you actually don't use background dash color, you use background, and I'll show you where that is in W3 Schools. It doesn't use the dash thing, it kind of puts them together and uses camel case. When it uses, even though it's the same CSS property of background color, it doesn't use dash color lowercase, it uses a C. So let's see what happens when I do that. Now that's what happens. It puts the background color of the element date string in there. So there's high date, there's show date. So that's what I'm doing. What if I wanted the background color not of that, but of the page? Well, the problem is here, I wouldn't know what to target because we would need an ID that targets the page. So what I could do, just real quickly, is go up here. Even though we're not doing real, strict HTML, we don't have a whole HTML set up. I could do something called, maybe I'll do body, and I'll just do an ID BG. I'll call it ID equals BG, and I should put that in quotes. That'll just be an opening tag, and then I'll put a closing body tag. And I'll close that up. So now I have an opening body tag and a closing body tag, and I'm using an ID because we're using this target by ID. So that's why we're using ID. You can target by element, but I'm going to target by ID because it's just easier since we're using that already. So we're going to target the BG ID. So if I go in here, I target BG instead of date string. What should happen is it should change all the body to a background color of red, and now it should hide the date. Now it just hides the date, it doesn't change the background color. So that's all we want. I think I'm going to stop there. We could do different things with this, but I think you get the idea of what we can do. We could change styles, we could change background colors, we could target different IDs, but that's what I'm going to do for now. So I'm going to stop this for now. Make sure you save that, and we'll stop there, and this will be for ex4-date function, and we're going to do more functions and do more changing things, but just be aware of what we can do with JavaScript already as far as that we could target not only HTML elements, but also CSS styles and apply them to a page. So it's a very, very powerful language that we could use in combination with HTML and CSS. So we'll stop there with ex4-date function.